This video segment introduces the modeler to the parts of a door frame. As you can see, this photograph right here are typical parts found in a door frame. And so there's some names that you need to know about the various parts and pieces. So for instance, here's the king stud. And a king stud, basic definition of it is that it's a vertical member, supporting member in a wall that goes from the bottom plate to the top plate, but in this case here we have a gambrel instead, so it's part of the roof. And so those are typically what we call king studs. Now, the next thing that you need to know here is the door king stud. And once again, it goes from the bottom plate up to the gambrel, but it's part of the frame of the door. Okay, it's part of that supporting framework for the door opening. We have a door trimmer, and we find those on either side of the door. And these mark the edge of the door, and they support the header which goes across the top. So the header is basically a 4x4 that supports the opening there for the doorway. Now we use a 4x4 up here because as you can imagine, anytime we put a hole in some kind of structure or object there, it weakens it. So we have to go ahead and double up some of these framing members, as you can see here, to help support the opening and keep it from shifting on us over time. Now the last piece here are the cripple studs, and these cripple studs represent the framing above the door, and they help support the gambrel above it, but they also go ahead and maintain the 16-inch spacing for the regularly spaced studs, just like the wall systems. So the reference point is this middle right here, and then it's 16 inches to either side. So you can see we have 1, 2 to that side, and we have 1, 2 to this side, and those are all spaced 16 inches apart. Now this spacing is critical to make sure the wall is strong enough to support the weight of the structure and the roof above it. So those are the basic pieces and parts, and we'll begin with the modeling directly. The purpose of this video is to demonstrate how to create the framing, the door framing for the end of the barn. Now you can see on our model here, we're going to go ahead and put a doorway in this end of the barn. And so we're going to start out by creating a bottom plate that's going to fit right in down here. So that's a pretty simple task. What we're going to do is just pick up the rectangle tool, and then I'm going to describe a rectangle just like this. Now I'm not measuring out per se at this point here, but I do know some of its dimensions. Like for example, the short dimension here, which is marked with this particular number here, we're going to make that 4 inches deep. So let me just type in a number here. Let's call it 48 inches and comma, and then we're going to make it 4 inches. Okay, and so you see this gives us a proper width piece, but not the length. So let's go ahead and give it some height here. We use push-pull for that. And I'm going to pull that upwards 2 inches. All right, so now we have this object here, but it's obviously not going to fit in there. So what I'm going to do is create a group at this point. I'm going to right-click it, and I'm going to make a group. And now I'm going to go ahead and move this into position. So I'm going to move this, let's see, right here, right in the corner. Now as you're working here, it's really important to make sure you're getting these pieces in the correct spot. You really don't want anything overlapping. So if it overlaps, then you got to redo it until it's correct. Okay. Now this part here, we want to make it the right size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this group here, just a single click, and then I'm going to click it again to go ahead and open this group. So you see here, everything else is now this greenish color, and the only piece that's white here is the one that we've double clicked. So now I'm going to take my push-pull tool here, and this will allow me to edit this group, and I'm just going to go ahead and extrude it out until we get to this point here. And so now when I click outside of that group area, now we're back to business here where we can go ahead and click on various groupings. All right, so that looks pretty good. We need to get set up with some guidelines here indicating the positions of our studs. Now this is going to be kind of a multi-step process here. We're going to go ahead and get our regularly spaced studs first, and then we're going to put the door framing in second. So the way we're going to do this is we've got to go ahead, much like our wall system, we have to put our wall studs here 16 inches apart. And so as I take a look at the object here, the end of the barn, I'd have to figure out what kind of reference point I want to use to go ahead and space these studs. So what I'd like to do here is just go ahead and set up some guidelines. So there's my tape measure tool. I'm going to use this edge right here of this wall stud. And I'm just going to go ahead and create some guidelines here, starting with the center point. So the center point is going to be the reference point for all my measuring. Now, as I'm doing this here, I want to be careful here. I've got to be accurate to make sure that this guideline is exactly vertical for one thing, and then right on the tip of this truss. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply drag over some more guidelines here, and notice how I'm dragging in the x-axis here. The red arrow is indicating I'm dragging in the x-axis. So I just want to click over to the right here, and I'm going to set that at 16 inches. So I type in 16. And then I'm going to do the same for the opposite side. So you see I'm getting my spacing here set, 1 foot 4 inches, 16 inches to either side, and I just want regular increments of 16-inch spacing, something like that. All right, that looks pretty good. I check those guidelines here, and so I think that's good for this particular segment. I'm going to go ahead and pause this video, and then go ahead and begin with the next phase. Okay, well, back for the next phase. Now we've identified where our stud centers are for the wall framing, and so what we have to do now is indicate how thick these pieces are going to be. So I'm going to take my guideline tool here, and I'm going to zoom in a tick or two, and I'm going to measure over from the center point exactly 1 inch. So what I'm doing is just going ahead and dragging along the x-axis. I can tell this here because the arrow there, the rubber band arrow, is red, and I'm going to type in 1 inch for the distance, and then I'm going to do the same for each of these. And this is going to, as I said, give me the thickness of my 2x4s. Now, as you're working here, it's really critical that you make sure you're dragging these lines in the X direction only. And you can tell that by the red arrow. All right, I've got one more to do. Okay, well, that looks pretty good. So now you can kind of visualize where those studs are going to go. And so now I'm going to pick up the line tool, and I'm going to create a line right here on this particular stud right here. So I zoom in pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and click a line there, start a line. Now I'm going down here to the base, and I'm going to go ahead and click another line right here at the intersection, and then one up here. And so it's a 4-sided figure, so I need to draw 4 lines. So you got to be careful and keep track of how many lines you're drawing. Now, if you've drawn 4 lines here, you'll get a closed polygon here, and that's a good sign. It shades itself white. We're going to go ahead and create this 2-dimensional polygon, and then we're going to extrude it back using push-pull to the proper width. So in this case here, I'm going to use push-pull, and I'm going to go on the back side of this, and I'm just going to push-pull this outward, and I want it to be exactly 4 inches in depth. And so we get something that looks like that. All right, so we got a little problem here. We see this is an intersection here. We've got 2 pieces that are intersecting in the same space, and that's not a good modeling practice. So what I'm going to do instead here is I'm going to go ahead and create a notch in this area here that will allow me these 2 pieces to fit together much like a jigsaw puzzle. So here's how this works. I need to first group this here. So yeah, the grouping is kind of tricky here because I just want to get just that piece in here. Well, matter of fact, maybe I'll wait on the grouping first. Yeah, so what I'll do instead is I'll just go ahead and take the line tool again, and I'm going to go ahead and describe a line right here, right on the front face of this here, and I'm using my intersection snaps to go ahead and make sure that this is snapped correctly, and then I just give it 1 click. All right, you're probably wondering, well, what did that do? Well, we've got to go ahead and select this piece here. That's the group for the for the truss assembly, and I'm just going to right click that and I'm going to hide it just like I showed you in the last time. So you see now we've got that piece hidden, and now we can work on this one truss, or this wall stud here. So what I've got here is this angled cut here that I need to go ahead and make a notch out of. So all I have to do here at this point is I just have to use my push-pull tool, and I have to go ahead and push this backwards, let's see, 2 inches. All right. Now you can see what that does for me. That gives me a cutout here, what I call a notch, so that this piece will accommodate the truss member. So let's go ahead and unhide that. Now remember, unhide is located over here. Let's see. I think it's yeah, display, I think. And there's unhide all, or you could do last, either one. And so you can unhide that and see now when we look at this here, now we can see there's a perfect geometric fit between those two pieces here. That looks really good here. Let's get that out of the way. And so as I look at this from different angles, you can see none of these pieces are intersecting any further. All right, well, let me go ahead and pause this here, and then we'll pick back up where we left off. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get this started here again. What we've done is we've created a king stud here for the wall, for the door frame side. Now we are going to have to group this here because I want to select it as an individual piece of geometry. And so as I was talking about earlier, the last segment, it's kind of difficult to get this group together. Okay, well, that wasn't so bad. What I did, let me get back out of there. But what I did is I just took a selection tool here, and then I just dragged a rectangle around it. Now, when you do selection rectangles there, anything totally inside of the rectangle is going to be selected. And since the rest of these assemblies or these groupings, since they weren't totally inside of that selection box, they weren't selected. So this is a really handy way to select objects, particularly when things get a little crowded like they are right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and right click this here and make it a group, and see now it's a single piece of geometry that we can select. All right, so there's that. Now taking a look at this one here. Now remember, in computer modeling we use symmetry a lot, the concept of symmetry. And so what I'm going to demonstrate to you is that that this piece here on the left is the same as the one on the right. It's just a mirror image of itself. Okay. And then the center line here is going to be the line of symmetry. So all I have to do is copy this piece and then flip it, invert it, basically, and copy it over into that line of symmetry I was talking about. And so let me demonstrate what I'm talking about here. So let me go ahead and duplicate this. So I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm going to duplicate this here. I'm going to grab a hold of this. But I'm going to first click the control button. Now watch the cursor. So I've got the plus sign there. That means I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this when I move it. So you see there's my move right here. And so what I've done here is I'm dragging this along the x-axis here. You see the red dotted line? It tells me that it's directly in line with that. So I'm going to drag it off to the side here so I can demonstrate this technique a little clearer. So there's the piece I want, but you notice the angle there is not going in the same direction as the piece where I want it to go. So what I can do is I can use the scale tool here, and that's simply typing the S. So I'll type S, and you see that changes the look of the object there. And so what we have, this is what I call a boundary box or a bounding box, and we have some control handles here. And so we can scale this in any direction. But what I'm mainly interested in is grabbing hold of that center button right here. And then what I'm going to do is drag this over, and I'm going to scale it across itself. So watch what I'm doing here. So I just click and drag. And notice how where it says the red scale, I want to go to -1. So that means that I've just inverted it. So you see here, see that right there? Let me undo that. You can kind of see as I'm working on it. So what I'm doing is grabbing a hold of this middle one here and then moving it over. We'll see how it inverts it over the line of symmetry. And so all I have to do is just be careful and just select -1 here where it says red scale in the lower right hand corner. Now once that's done, Now I can go ahead and use my select tool and click off this here. And so you see we've inverted this piece here across the line of symmetry, which is that center point there. And so now this angle here is matching this. And so now it's just a simple matter of going ahead and using my move tool here. Let's see, where is that? Let's see. There it is. So I'm going to use my move tool, and I'm going to select this piece right here. So I better select it first. And then I'll use my move tool. And now what I'm going to do is drag this over right in position here, zooming in pretty close, right in that intersection right there. So you see, when we computer model things, sometimes we can use that line of symmetry to help us make sure that it's the same piece, it's just inverted. So let me pause it here, and then we'll go ahead and pick it up with the next segment. Okay, we're back. We're going to go ahead and make another piece. We're going to get some layout lines set up for our door opening. And so let's kind of review where we're at. So what I've done is I've created a piece for this side and created a piece for this side. And so now what we have to do is identify where these two pieces, which is make up the door edge and the framing for the door opening, we need to locate those with some guidelines so we know exactly where they're going to be positioned. So you can see there are two framing members that are composing this this door opening here. And the first one is a door king stud, which is the outer piece. And then we have the door trimmer here, which is the inner piece. And so we have to locate both of those in our layout. So let's go back to SketchUp here. And we're going to use the center point here to figure out where exactly this door is supposed to be positioned. So tape measure tool, I'm going to go here and click on the center point, right? And then I'm going to go over half the total distance of the door, which is 24 inches. So I'm going to type in 24. Okay. I'm going to do the same to the opposite side. So once again, from the center point outward, and I want it 24 inches also. Okay. So what we've done is we've identified where the door opening is. And if we look back on our drawing here, what I've done is just identified where this piece is going to go. All right, so now, since there are two framing members here, we're going to go ahead and describe their thickness also. So tape measure tool, I'm going to go over 2 inches, and then I'm going to go over 2 inches more. So I need to do the same to the opposite side as well. So 2 inches, 2 inches. Okay, now with that in position, we can go ahead and draw the door king stud. So pencil tool, using my intersection snaps. Remember, I need to draw 4 lines, and then close the polygon with that 4th line. And so now, since I have a 2-dimensional object, I can go ahead and use push-pull to extrude this back 4 inches. So 4 inches in the distance box. All right, this here, we've got to go ahead and create a notch in this piece because these two pieces are intersecting. So I'm going to go ahead and select that truss member. I'm going to right-click it, and I'm going to hide this. Let's see, there we go, hide. Whoops, let's undo that. Before I do that there, I better mark where this notch needs to go. So pencil tool, going to go right here, mark that edge there using the pencil tool, go back to the select tool, I'm going to right click this, and I'm going to hide. All right, so now we've got this piece here where we can work with it, and I want to take the push pull again, and I'm going to extrude that backward 2 inches. All right, so that gives me that piece here. That's what we call the door king stud. And now I'm going to go ahead and group it by using my select tool and then drawing a box around it. Select tool, come on you. And I'm going to draw a box around it just like that. And I'm checking to make sure I haven't selected anything else. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to group this. Okay. Now with that grouped, now I can simply copy this over. So let's see here. I want to go ahead and unhide my last piece. And now I want to go ahead and copy this over. So watch how I'm copying this. going to copy this over using my move tool. Let's see, where is that? There it is. I'm going to hit my control key, and I'm going to move this over from here, and I'm going to move it over to this point right here. You're probably saying, well, that's not right on the right spot. Well, remember, I'm going to take my scale tool here, and now I'm going to scale this here by clicking on this here toward the center. -1 is what my goal is. And so you see the way I've selected that here, it's put it in the proper position after I've scaled it. So that's a little time saver there that you can use to go ahead and get that set. All right, well, I better pause there, and then we'll go ahead and pick up with the rest of the framing members. Okay, well, we're back, and now I want to go ahead and kind of reorient ourselves here. We went ahead and put in the door king studs here, but let's take a look at our sketch again. Now, what we're interested in doing is creating the door tremors. Now, the door tremor here actually represents the height of the doorway. And so in our case here, our doorway was supposed to be 6 feet tall. So that's going to be the exact same height of the door tremor as well. And as you can see, both of these rest on top of the bottom plate. So let's go ahead and get started with that, and we'll get that all figured out. All right, so here's the position of the door tremor on either side. Now, you remember, the nice thing is about computer modeling, we only have to model one of these and then just duplicate the other one. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Let's go ahead and get a guideline set up. Probably be about the best thing to do. Get set up, and we need to know how tall the doorway is. So what I'm doing is using my guideline tool, and I'm moving straight up in the blue axis here, which is the z-axis. And what I want to do here is I want to drag this up a certain distance here, and I want to make this 6 feet tall. So I take 6 times 12, which would be 72. So what I'm going to do is type in 72 inches for this particular guideline. And what that does is indicates the overall height of the doorway. And so now, really, it's pretty simple. We can go ahead and get a trimmer set up here by simply using the rectangle tool. And what I'm doing is clicking down here at the base and then dragging a rectangle up here where it intersects with the top of the door. So then I just click that. Well, you see I've got a rectangle here. And so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and extrude this back. Now, before I do that, though, I'm going to do something here. It's kind of picky thing, but it kind of bothers me. I'm going to right-click this here, and I'm going to, let's see, reverse faces. And what that does, and yours may not do that, I don't know, I guess it just depends on how you draw the rectangle. But the face, now the back face is facing away from us, and the front face, the white face, is facing us. And so that's just something that kind of bothers me when I do that, when it does it, and so I fix it because, well, I can. So push pull, I'm going to go ahead and push pull this backwards 4 inches, and so now I'm just using this edge as the guide for how thick it needs to be. And so now I've created the trimmer stud. So now I can just go ahead and group this one. And it's always a good idea to group your geometry here so you can select it as a single piece of geometry. So I right click and make a group. And then all I have to do on this one is take a duplication tool here. So we need our move tool. So that's a scale. So we're going to go back here, and we're going to press the control key again. Don't forget that. And see, I see a little plus sign next to my cursor. And now I'm just going to move this over here to this position just like that. So you see there's our trimmer in position that we want it in. All right, let's see. I think we have enough time. We can go ahead and do the header now. Now the header is a 2x4 just like those, but actually it's going to be a 4x4. It's going to be 4 inches tall and then 4 inches deep. So what I'm going to do is create another guideline, and I'm going to make this 4 inches tall, and it's going in the blue direction here, the blue axis. So sometimes it's a little funny, so you got to make sure it's actually going in the blue direction. So there's 4 inches in height. And so now we're just going to take our rectangle tool, and we're going to describe a rectangle right here, just like this. And then we're going to extrude it back 4 inches using push-pull. And I'm just using that edge for the width of the extrusion. And let's see, yep, we got enough time. We're going to go ahead and group this as well. And so once again, just drawing a box around it. Everything inside the box is selected. Anything that's not totally in the box is not. So I'm checking to make sure I haven't selected anything else other than that. I'm going to right click and group this. All right, so now that is an individual piece of geometry. All right, so that looks pretty good. So why don't we stop there and then we'll go ahead and pick up again where we left off. Okay, back again for another unit of instruction here. What we have is we've got our header completed and our trimmers. So let's take a look back on our drawing here. So we've completed the header part, we've completed the trimmer part. And so now what we have to do is create these cripple studs here above the doorway. Now remember, these are spaced 16 inches apart. So, but we've already got their locations laid out. So that's not that big of a deal. So looking at this here now, it's strictly a matter of doing just like we did for these two pieces here. We know where they're located, the pieces are located, and we just have to correctly size and model them. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to start out with this one here. Now, once again, the beauty of this here is I'm going to create one of these here, move it over this position, and then flip it or invert it using the scale tool. So it's just a matter of making one piece and copying it. So line tool. Starting up here, remember it's a 4-sided figure, so I've got to draw 4 lines for it to be a closed polygon. All right, so you see that was pretty easy. Going to the back side now. Now I'm just going to push-pull this, and using this edge right here as a guide, so it's making an inference, using the inference tool for SketchUp. And so there I have that piece. Well, so just go through the same process. I'm going to take the line tool here. I'm going to draw a line like that. I'm going to select the select tool here. Select that piece, right click, hide. And now I'm going to push pull this back 2 inches. All right. And now I'm going to group it. So select tool, draw a box around it, right click, group. All right, so let's go ahead and get back our truss member. So display, we want to unhide last. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this again. Now watch how I do this. This is pretty clever. It's a time saver. So I use my move tool here. And what I want to do is I want to select this point, let's see, right here. And I'm going to move it to this point right there. And then I'm going to flip it backward using the scale tool. So watch how this works. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure I have my move tool on. And then I'm going to go ahead and click my control or press my control key. That's going to duplicate. And so now I click and drag on this point right here. I'm going to drag it across here until I get to this position right there. And like I said previously, you're saying, oh, this isn't the right spot. Well, it will be once we use the scale tool. So I let go of it. I'm going to use my scale tool there by pressing the S button. And now I am just going to flip that around. Okay. So I can barely see that middle handle there, and that's the one we want to click on. And so all I'm going to do here is just click and drag this over until it, in the distance it says -1. That means it's flipped itself around the line of symmetry there. And so now it's in the correct spot. Okay, so let's see, we got about 1.5 minutes left here. So let's see if I can go ahead and draw this in position here. Whoops, got to go to the top. Now this one here is a 5-sided figure, so I'm going to have to draw 5 lines. There we go. And then there's that problem I was telling you about. I'm going to go ahead and fix that. Right click it. And we're going to reverse faces. And now I'm going to use push pull. Oops, come on. Work. All right, there we go. And I'm going to take my line tool here, and I'm going to draw a couple lines right here, and then right here. Going to hide this assembly, truss assembly, so hide it. Let's see, hide, there we go. And then I'm going to push pull this back 2 inches. All right, so push pull. And it creates a nice little notch out for us. And then I'm going to go ahead and unhide this. So unhide last. I can go ahead and close that. And now what I'm going to do is do a little cleanup work here. Okay, so I'm going to take that, clean up some of these guidelines. Just like that. And that should do it. Okay, very good. We'll stop there and we'll just see you next time.